Hi, you're watching Conversations, and I'm your host, Raul Barquette. Today, my guest is Todd Love. I've known Todd for about, 3 years now, and we met just being a part of the art industry. I like to kind of call you, you're like this rogue nomad of the art world. Can you kind of explain this for people? Because I'm probably not going to do it the best.
I think it's kind of appropriate that your original guest canceled at short notice, yes. And I just kind of wandered in here because that's how I feel about the time I've spent working for galleries, art studios, auction houses, anywhere that they'll have me, A lot of times I'm the person they call when there's
there's a last minute catastrophe. What are we going to do? Let's call Todd.
Yeah, for a long time I wasn't the best at hanging art on walls or solving problems, but I lived really near where the galleries were. And at this point, most people had a longer commute. They'd have to call somebody from the boroughs, and at the time I was on the Lower East Side. And that was all the difference. I could get there first to fight the fire. So. Yeah,
you've always kind of come in and be like, if I need a favor, I need someone to help me with something, kind of Mr. Reliable. I knew I could count on you. I'm like, who can I call? Let me call Todd. So last night, I shoot a text. Hey, Todd, I'm shooting a pilot for this art-based talk show. Any interest in being on the show? And I get, ... Really? I didn't expect that answer. And then I got, I actually got your second text after I called you. So my phone died, gave you a call back. And we had a conversation. And so you're here today.
I like to talk. And the only reason I hesitated was I got in this pointless exchange on the internet. And it's 2016, I'm still arguing with strangers on the internet. And I was just depleted. When I got your text, I was like, I'm going to communicate some more, but I've had a day to rejuvenate. I'm ready to go.
I was going to say, you've never needed 24 hours to be able to talk again. So I'm glad you're here. So can you tell us, how did you kind of get your break into the art world? Was that something that was intentional or kind of just?
Well, we met working at Jonathan Levine Gallery in Chelsea. And I was just recalling, how did I end up there? And the way I ended up there was a guy named Mike, who still works there. He previously worked at a gallery called Knoedler on the Upper East Side, which was around for 163 years, before there was even an art world, before there were museums, They were a gallery that, when Vincent van Gogh's nephew, Theo, came to the New World, brought some of his uncle's paintings, he showed them at this gallery and they were interested, and he wrote back, and this is all online, the correspondence, all of Van Gogh's correspondence is posted online. And he wrote back that he didn't know about that place. He didn't trust them. He thought maybe they were a little fly-by-night. So fast forward 163 years, and this guy Mike, who was working there, called me up, and there was a lot of sudden activity at the place, a lot of things moving around all of a sudden. And he had a lot of work for me. I was working for an art handling company. We'd show up and we'd move a lot of things to storage or back to clients or whatever. We went down to Miami. I went down separately from this gallery. But I went down to Art Basel, which happens every December, biggest art fair in this Western Hemisphere, and worth going to for anyone. We get down there, and the whole art world is shocked that this gallery that's existed forever was padlocked by federal agents because they were involved in selling forgeries of huge artists,
not just one.
This was Picasso, Miro. And just the other day, a friend of mine's mother just said to me, she saw this thing on 60 Minutes about this gallery in New York, and she said, they were involved in selling this artwork, and now there's a trial. And I was like, I happened to work there. So Mike couldn't work there anymore because that place didn't exist anymore. And he went to a gallery called Jonathan Levine Gallery, which specializes in street art. It's the type of thing you might see in Juxtaposed magazine, I'd say, for sure. Which is definitely an interest of yours, and I've worked with a lot of graffiti artists as well.
Sure.
But again, happenstance and just kind of stumbling in to a place, the idea that you would get a job because of some weird forging investigation that has nothing to do with you. It's it's a different method of getting hired than going to art school.
But I think that's kind of how the art industry is. It's very galleries come and go, and this just goes to show even the large ones that have been around for a long time. You never know what's going to happen. So work comes and goes, and gigs kind of come and go. You bounce around, and there's not a lot of people who really stay in one place for a whole lot of time. And do you think that's kind of indicative of the business, or kind of the people who are in the business?
I see it both ways, because I think that there's a lot of professionalism in art that didn't exist decades ago.
Yeah, when they were picture sellers versus gallerists or
right. But I meet young people who are coming in to be art assistants. I'm thinking of like this one particular group of people that went to Davidson College in North Carolina, and the thing that I always think about them, they're younger than I am, is they're also clean cut, and they're so professional. And to them, art school didn't involve getting weird Edward Scissorhand haircuts, or doing a lot of drugs and saying "F you, mom and dad." Yeah. It was they're just really sober and competent.
Yeah, it became like a legitimate career choice versus maybe a rebellion or.
And I think there's a place for both. I think that the chaos and individuality has its place, but then it's easy to get fed up with somebody whose inspiration is just ego or drug abuse or
for sure,
whatever.
Yeah. There's definitely you definitely meet those. So before you got into the art world, art handling in particular, what else did you do?
I was a kid from the Midwest, and I didn't grow up with a classy family with a lot of contact to culture and stuff. I liked art, but I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't have much of an education in it. And so the things that I would find out about weren't necessarily the most up-to-date, most relevant artists of today. If it was a greatest hits, like Andy Warhol or Keith Haring. And maybe at the public library, I'd find somebody who would blow my mind, like Chris Burden, when I saw that, in 1973, I think it was, he got shot in the arm as a piece called Shoot, which questioned what art is and the Vietnam War and all sorts of things that were going on. That blew my mind. And I came to the city when I was 19, and it was like a place that I'd only seen on TV. And it felt unreal that I could even, again, just walk in unaccredited and sort of unauthorized and just mingle, with, have somebody like David Bowie live a few blocks away from you and just be a guy that you'd see on the street, And over time, especially with things like graffiti, I have sort of a checklist of all the people who I was interested in. Keith Haring was dead long before I came here, or a year before I came here, I guess. But since then, I've, put up these very large-scale works for the Deitch Project space that was in Long Island City a few years ago. I worked on the Houston and Bowery wall that was a 30-year, I guess it would have been his 50th birthday. As a celebration of that, they repainted the wall that way that he had 30 years earlier, I believe. Yeah. Kenny Scharf is another guy I've worked with a few different times. And I was able to do it, again, like sort of availability and willingness. In the case of Kenny, the first time I worked with him, he was the originator of fun art. And his art's really whimsical. He would paint the Jetsons and the Flintstones. and he had made this hot dog in a bun with cartoon faces on either end that were inflatable, full of helium, over 20 feet long. And he needed a pilot for this thing, but he wanted that person to wear a hot dog suit. And the gallery that this showed at was the Hole Gallery. And nobody at the Hole wanted to put on a hot dog suit. And so my phone rang because it's like, oh, Todd will do it, you know. And of course, predictably, when you put on a hot dog suit, suddenly you're a star, you know. And I think the first person I recall walking in was Debbie Harry from Blondie, you know, another childhood hero that I'm excited to meet. And she walks right up and wants to meet Mr. Hot Dog, and then all of a sudden everybody's jealous, and they all wish they put on the hot dog suit, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you make it out to Kenny's show at the Nassau County Museum?
I did. I went out there. He was painting cars, doing what he calls the Car Bombs Project, where he will paint his cartoon characters on your car. A mutual friend of ours and person we've worked with drives one of those cars. And
yeah, that's crazy.
I've been behind the wheel, or in the passenger seat. You get a lot of attention just driving around. People do a double take, you know.
You think the Volkswagen Bugs with the eyelashes are, you know, kind of a statement? You should see this car. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. But it was interesting to go out to that museum and see that he's painting in this huge lawn and pristine environment. And I felt like I was watching golf. Like there was like everybody was like really reverently watching him paint these cars and just whispering in a polite golf clap.
Nice, yeah. I missed actually. So I saw the show, but I wasn't there during any of his kind of activations that he did. But I thought it was really interesting, and they kind of had this, as you know, this side exhibition of other kind of street artists. So besides Kenny's show and his installation there, you know, there was a Basquiat, a Lee or two, Futura, Haring work, a bunch of street artists and kind of graffiti writers, 80s.
I was actually
70s.
thinking of that. The upstairs, the downstairs at the museum is all Kenny Scharf retrospective. Yeah. And then upstairs are all these graffiti artists from that era. And I was actually thinking of that when I mentioned sort of the list I had when I was a kid, or what I would be aware of because of, again, a book at the public library. And, you know, when I moved to the city, Lee lived kitty corner across the street from me. Futura had his toy store was a few blocks up near Houston. Mm-hmm. And Crash showed at Levine Gallery, and you worked on his car as well?
Yeah. So he had the, what, do you remember what year that was?
It was a 1960s or early 70s, but it was a Mini Cooper, the original Mini Cooper, which Crash painted. Crash was one of the first, that subway painting kind of graffiti guys, and he got his name, I think this is real, I don't think it's apocryphal. He was interested in computers, and he got permission, I think, to use the New York City public school system mainframe in the early 70s and crashed it. And there was a huge panic of everyone's grades are lost or whatever. And his nickname, Crash, was not something he was proud of at first. He didn't go to school for a few weeks after that. And he's a great guy and a sweetheart. But there's a guy he was the first person who did a gallery show of those street graffiti artists, that first wave of guys. And, you know, a couple years later, it took the art world by storm, and, you know, there was definitely...
major interest.
Yeah.
And he was in Style Wars, so he wasn't in the original Style Wars, but the director's cut that came out afterwards, there's all this footage of, you know, these other people who didn't make the original cut, but Crash is along there. And you know, it's funny because if you watch Style Wars, you think it's interesting that he wasn't in it, seeing that he was one of the first guys to break out from painting trains to actually having, you know, solo shows in Soho. Yeah. But, you know, he was obviously on their radar.
And then I just ran into him the other day down by Sarah Roosevelt Park in Chinatown, just up on a ladder painting, and his kids were with him, you know, going on to the next generation.
Yeah. You know, and he's keeping it kind of within the industry. You know, he still makes art. He's still in art shows, but he also co-founded a gallery in the Bronx. So he's trying to bring, art to underserved areas.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big-time artist too. In another sense, like he painted a guitar for Eric Clapton.
Yep.
And it sold at a charity auction for, I want to say, over $200,000 or something, and then it led to Fender releasing a limited edition of the guitar with his art on it. A day or two after I saw him, I was in Long Island City, Queens, just walking along, and I saw two guys painting wild style graffiti on it. Walked up, and one of them said, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Out looking for Pokemons?" And that guy's from Staten Island, Trace One. I'm out of touch with what you know what's going on now, and you know names, and the places where this guy said I could go see him paint at a party and do a mural, is a place that you're involved with and connected to.
Yeah. Richmond Hood Co.
Yeah.
So Richmond Hood Co. is doing they do their cooling on Castleton every summer.
Yeah.
So they have live painting, dance party, different kind of interactions to bring that neighborhood, kind of to life.
Yeah. But I was just nodding along like I knew what he was talking about.
Oh yeah, maybe I'll be there.
Yeah.
Right?
It's kind of a funny thing is like the divide between I guess both of them are on the street, like he was painting a wall he had permission to be painting.
Yeah.
So were these guys.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're in.
Yeah, it's completely two different worlds. You may have the same medium, you use the same tools, and the end goal is the same, but it's a matter of maybe 20 years difference between them, and one started painting on trains, and one started painting after trains were cleaned.
About a year ago, I had an interaction with the police that wasn't too pleasant, and this cop noticed that I had paint on my jacket. And he was like, "Hey, what's up? You do graffiti?" And I was like, "Well, kinda, but the guys I work with, some of them have grandkids now, and it's all backed by these major galleries and institutions and stuff, And I was being a little bit of a smartass because he said, "Well, what do you write on the walls? What's your name?" And I said, "Banksy." And I thought I was being funny. I thought everybody knew who Banksy was and that he'd get it. And he called to his partner and said, "Let's look this guy up, see if he's wanted." And I was a little scared there for a moment because I think Banksy is wanted.
Yes.
And I think he'd be in big trouble. And I just got lucky, I guess, that they didn't feel like taking me in and checking to see if I'm Banksy.
You have a couple Banksy stories, actually, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah.
This is a new one on me. There was... Oh, were you with the Invader story? You involved with that one?
No, tell me this one.
Oh, so Mike, I think it was Mike. So they're bringing around Invader around the city to do installs for the show that's coming up. And they go to the first place that they scouted out, because Invader's, he likes to have a game plan, he knows where the tiles are going, and it's going to be, we're going to hit here, it's going to take me 5 minutes, we're going to drive up here, by that time it's going to be 1:15, and I'm going to hit this spot and then go on. He has a map.
Ryan Gosling and Drive.
It's it's a mission, it's like a military
tactical strike.
Yes, it's a tactical strike. So they go out to the first strike zone. He gets up on the ladder. He's epoxying, but the cops already know. For some reason, cops are there. They descend on him. Invader gets arrested. Now Mike's lookout down the block in the truck, like, oh man, I'm gonna get fired. This is an issue. He just got arrested.
He's from overseas, right?
Yeah, he's from France.
Yeah.
So this is an issue. So they take him in. So he follows a cop car in a white panel truck, which is, you don't want to follow cop cars in a panel truck. It's just probably not a smart move in a post 9/11 world. So he follows him to the precinct, and he's like, well, I got to get the ladder back. So he pulls up to the parking lot of the precinct. He gets out, and they look at him like, you here for your ladder? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, keep going, Banksy. And they give him the ladder, and he gets back in and makes a couple phone calls, and I got to see how they...
This is Mike DG?
Yes, this is Mike.
The thing about this Mike guy is he's got the big plug earrings and sleeve tattoos, and he looks like some kind of knucklehead New York hardcore guy.
Couldn't be further.
He is the most, what's the word? Like
by the
respectable,
book,
by the book.
straight-laced.
Yes, completely not judgeable by his cover. Yeah. And he's not the kind of guy who's going to ride off a ladder.
And he's you don't chalk up the ladder to expenses. He was just more embarrassed to be associated. He's like, oh man, I got to get the ladder from the police. I should be sleeping right now. But you do have another Banksy story. I think that's potentially worth telling.
So usually when I'm working for galleries, I guess my title is art handler most of the time. And a guy who I met, who was at the time working as an art handler as well, named David Henry Brown Jr., worth looking up on Instagram as David Henry Nobody Jr., Jr. Yeah. He does the craziest selfies that you will ever see. And he's very prolific. And I'm not on Instagram, but I look it up. I Google Instagram so I can see his stuff regularly. But he's a prankster, and he's done projects before I met him. There was one, I think, called Red Carpet Rollers, where he would roll out a red carpet and have paparazzi posed and just sort of excitedly wait for nothing. The red carpet would go to like the back door of a bakery, and he would just see how people would come around and get excited, and like rumors would start. I think it's Patrick Swayze. Like whatever.
He also did the Alex von Furstenberg impersonations. He would go to parties and just pretend to be Alex von Furstenberg and take pictures with celebrities, and he did this for like years. Yeah, and had a whole show of just selfies with Hillary Clinton or selfies with other fashion people. Yeah, being someone that he doesn't even look like.
So when Banksy did his big New York residency, Dave wanted to insert himself in this, and he'd come up with this outlandish costume, which is a hoodie that just says Banksy, big letters, and the most fake mustache and wig that you can imagine. And he would just show up at wherever Banksy's latest thing had happened and sort of try and get noticed, but be suspiciously undercover. And he had a couple of us filming him to see what would happen. And as things went on, like day after day, he'd keep trying to find a way to position himself. And he had this idea that he went to some opening, and the big critic Jerry Salz was there, and he got these pictures taken with him at Jerry Salz. And so he was feeling like he was getting a piece of his paparazzi prankster. He was getting there, but he hadn't really nailed it yet. And so he had this idea that he was going to wear his Banksy disguise and go to Times Square and pay one of the caricature artists to do a charcoal drawing of him. Hopefully the least talented guy he could find. And I think that Banksy himself went and had that done and had the guy draw him in a ski mask. I believe that was something that he did previously. So Dave had this idea, and I get sucked into all these stunts, And so he and I and this guy Instigator had our cameras, and we were set. And there's an artist named Elvis, L''VIS. Guy's real New York character. He's been around since the 80s. I think his first job when he just randomly landed in the city was he just crashed at Warhol's factory and just pulled silk screens just in exchange for a place to sleep in the corner of the factory. So Elvis was my neighbor. And I met him in Bed-Stuy. He just lived across the street, And he's this big Caribbean guy that looks like a bouncer with a voice like Jeffrey Holder and South London accent. And so I said, we need Elvis on this. So he wore a black suit and carried this like sinister looking briefcase and walked around everywhere Banksy went, like doing security, just being intimidating. And the capper on this was, there was a photographer that shoots the like party photographs for people who attend openings, who I knew, who also worked for one of the tabloids. And when I did work on big graffiti projects, I'd tip her off and she'd show up and take pictures, you know. And she had her own, she took a lot of pictures at hip hop parties as well. So there's like a little rap and graffiti connection there. And I betrayed my friend a little bit, misled her.
For the purposes of art.
To believe that I was legitimately involved with Banksy's residency and that she was going to get the exclusive tip-off that this thing was going down. And so I called her and told her this was happening, and she got there too fast. She has her like police scanner when she's doing her tabloid work, and she's just really quick getting around the city with her press pass and her press parking pass, I think. So she got there before us, and I lied to her to stall, and one of Banksy's pieces was he'd had a box truck, white box truck, that he built like this Garden of Eden in the back. And to throw her off, I said, well, we're coming in the truck, so look for us. And I thought that she would just get distracted looking at all the white box trucks trying to figure out which one's us. Little did I know that one of Banksy's other pieces was this truck that was a big fake meat packing
with the sheep
truck with like Muppet animals in the back making like cartoon noises as they went off to their deaths. You know, it was to make you think about eating meat, the ethics of that. So I'm on the cell phone with her. I told her look for the truck, and then she sees the other truck and believes me. And now we're in because I said the truck would be there, and the truck was there. So she goes chasing the truck and taking pictures of it and loses it and is like, where are you guys? And then suddenly we appear and we do the thing. He sits down, he gets his portrait drawn, we act important and confuse people. A few passerbys sort of notice, and at the time there was a lot of Banksy mania going on.
Yeah.
And a couple bold people started offering to buy the sketch that was being done and started taking pictures. The thing wrapped up, Banksy and his bodyguard took off and caught a cab and ran away. Yeah. And she chased after him, and I kind of interfered with her progress a little bit so that they could get away. And then we started having to try and convince her employer to publish these Banksy shots. And they had a deadline by which a certain time that the paper had to be put to bed, which meant, after something like 6:30 p.m., if they didn't have verification that this was legit news that met their standards and could be published, they weren't going to run it. And the clock was ticking down, and they were checking Banksy's website. And I think on that particular day, he'd put up a notice, an item that said, today's art has been canceled due to police activity. Just text on a blank background, which was the artwork. That's like a bumper sticker, you know? But people interpreted it as
no art
news. That he'd been arrested, you know.
Yeah, and all ends, all's well that ends well.
I actually avoid her because I feel guilty about it. I'll see her again. I see her around sometimes.
Well, I want to thank you for coming out. This has been fun.
Sure.
That's been our time.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for watching Conversations.